Good to see you, Laura. I'll start with you. What's your read on how this meeting went and sort of how it's being, I guess, discussed and debated by politicians in the days since?
Look, I think it's being received as a short-term win. Whether it's a long-term win remains to be seen. And I found it really interesting, Vassy, in your interview with Dominic LeBlanc, that he couldn't present any assurances from the Trump administration that Canada would be exempt from the tariffs. And I think that's simply because Canada doesn't know yet. There's so much uncertainty in dealing with Mr. Trump that Canada simply can't come out and tell the public that everything is hunky-dory. But was it good optics for Mr. Trudeau and Mr. LeBlanc and the inner circle to travel to Mar-a-Lago to meet with the president face-to-face? I think it was, and I think that's why you saw Pierre Poilievre come out over the weekend and come out after the fact and try to slam Mr. Trudeau for a lack of a plan on the border. I think it was maybe one of the first times we've seen in recent months Mr. Poilievre appearing to be a bit behind the eight ball on the Canadian government's actions. They really seem to have been preempting the Liberals on all sorts of issues. So yes, it was good for Trudeau. Whether he's able to get something out of it, that's the next step, and that does leave the Liberals open to criticism. But in terms of getting a face-to-face meeting with Donald Trump, I think that was a good sign for Mr. Trudeau and his government.
Michelle, I think Laura's so right to frame it like short-term versus long-term, right? Obviously, the long-term objective, the metric for success is very easily measured. It's whether or not these tariffs are applied and to what degree. But in the short term, your thoughts on the optics of that meeting and what it means for this government?
Well, first of all, I don't think anybody had on their bingo card that our Prime Minister would be down in Mar-a-Lago last Friday night. Like, let's be clear. And I think the fact that he was there really kind of speaks to the fact that there are actual relationships. There is a real dialogue that's going on between our government, our Prime Minister's office, and the incoming Trump administration. And so that is super important. I think we would have been foolish to think that one dinner or any one meeting is going to change his mind overnight. He's laid out his, very publicly where he wants to see action from Canada. And I suspect that they got a lot more detail in terms of exactly what milestones or exactly what objectives that he actually has in terms of fentanyl, cross-border immigration, but also kind of the cooperation that he wants to see. And so I would think that they now have something to work towards. Now, whether, our policy agenda and the Liberal policy agenda actually matches what ultimately Mr. Trump wants, I'm not sure anybody knows. I doubt that it was that fine of detail, but boy, oh boy, the fact that they're actually talking, that there is those kind of relationships going back and forth, I think it's good news, or at least a ray of optimism for us that maybe we can resolve this without so much harm coming to our economy.
Laura mentioned the comments from the leader of the Conservative Party. I'm going to play a quick clip, Shakir, and then I'll get your take on the framing from the opposition.
Normally, when a prime minister goes to the United States to meet a president, they're looking to make gains. What gains did we hear from Mr. Trudeau? None. He's just trying to limit losses. And this is the consequence of having a weak prime minister who's lost control of our borders, lost control of immigration, lost control of crime and drugs, and lost control of our economy.
So, Shakir, what did you think of that framing?
Yeah, I think for Pierre Poilievre, some of the key metrics, whether it's, drug seizures, whether it's asylum claims, whether it's illegal migrants and their interactions at U.S. Border Patrol, some of those numbers are going in the wrong direction, right? And I think in his view, why wasn't the Prime Minister ahead of this, right? Why does it take Donald Trump to do something or say something for us to kind of do things that are actually beneficial for our own country? And so I think for Pierre, he said it previously, he viewed it as a lack or an absence of leadership on the Liberals' part, which is why, one, the premiers were stepping up, saying a bunch of different things before Trudeau even acted to speak to the president and go down to Mar-a-Lago. But two, I think on his end, we've always asked him to put out policies, put out a plan, and he actually came out with a 7-point plan to kind of fix the border. So I think on his end, he's trying to demonstrate a level of leadership He's trying to put forth policies where people are asking, put some meat on the things that you're saying. And I think he views it as, in the absence of the prime minister showing, leadership and taking a proactive approach to some of these issues that President Trump has identified. Here I am. I'm going to put forth a plan that I think could be effective and willing to kind of remove the paralysis in Parliament to actually move forward on securing the border.
It's an interesting thing, Kathleen, because I think there are valid questions to be asked about, is this just in response to Trump that they're acting at the border? Did they really have plans before? Are there issues that they could have better secured? And I feel like if Poilievre had delivered those lines like 3 days before, when the premiers were all upset too, but the timing of it was interesting. Like the day after, like the weekend after, there actually was this face-to-face. It just sort of had an odd feeling to it. Just the timing of it. I get the questions, but.
Yeah. Listen, I'm not here to pump the tires of Justin Trudeau, but I definitely think that the calls by both the opposition leader, Pierre Poilievre, and even my own party, the New Democrats, saying that Trudeau came back empty-handed just really points to how ridiculous question period has gotten in recent weeks. I think no one had, as Michelle said, a dinner with Trump literally 48 hours after the meetings with the premiers on their bingo card. I think that has to be counted as a win. And while Michelle pointed out, it also pointed out to the strength of the relationships between the Prime Minister's office and U.S. officials. I think actually even more important, it showed a willingness on behalf of the Liberals to actually get to work on something, right? We know that working people are going to be in the crosshairs of these tariffs, whether it's the manufacturing sector, whether it's ag, whether it's mining, forestry, you name it. And we need to see the government, the entire government, opposition included, get to work on these issues because they're serious. Listen, I hope I don't have to tell anyone on this panel that like branded podium art and photo ops on a late Sunday news conference doesn't policy make, right? Pierre Poilievre said on Sunday, he's like, I'm upset, that there are so many thousands, tens of thousands of Canadians that are dying from the crisis in drugs in our country right now. I'm pretty sure every party leader agrees with that, but there's only one party leader, being Pierre Poilievre, who has consistently ignored the evidence and the science behind a safe drug supply. So I know I'm diverting into the fentanyl crisis, but it's serious. Like at this time, when we have question period that has been stalled out since September 16th, not getting any work done, this is the kind of work that we elect people, we hire people to do in Ottawa for us, to fight for our jobs, to fight for our economy. And right now we're at a standstill and nothing's getting done in the House.
Yeah, I would just really quickly, I'm going to take a break. We're going to pick the conversation up on the other end of that break. I think there are valid questions about why he said what he said yesterday. I do think there's also a valid debate over the best drug policy to pursue. And I think the Conservatives would also blame the Liberals for the inertia right now. Like there's a debate over that in Parliament as well. But